3 days before Christmas. As Asheville's streets glittered under a veil of flurries, I stepped into my apartment, the world outside humming with carols that felt like whispers from another life. My hospital clogs clicked against the hardwood, and I shed my coat, its weight a quiet echo of the day's labor. A forest green sweater lay folded over my suitcase, gifts wrapped in crimson paper stacked by the door like fragile vows. I'd baked apple cinnamon bread pudding, its warm scent curling through the air. A recipe my family devoured but never credited. I was ready, heart open, hands full until my phone buzzed. Shattering the moment, Ethan's name glowed on the screen, and I answered, expecting a request for napkins or a ride. Instead, his voice was thin. Rehearsed. Hey, Alexis, Celeste is coming for Christmas. She's sensitive to, energies. Your hospital work feels heavy. Maybe sit this one out. It's not personal. The words landed like frost. Sharp and silent, I gripped the phone, my gaze fixed on the lazy blink of my Christmas tree's lights. Not personal. An hour later, my mother called, her voice soft as velvet wrapped around a blade. Honey, we're keeping things simple for Celeste. Your presence might stir confusion. If you show up, we might not open the door. The threat hung there, stripped of pretense. An eviction dressed in courtesy. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. Okay, I said, the syllable bitter as ash. Hanging up. I stood in the quiet, the radiator's hum mingling with the snow's soft patter against the window. My gifts, my sweater, my hope they seemed garish now. Relics of a faith I'd clung to too long. I'd spent years trying to be enough, to fit into the narrow spaces my family carved for me. But that night, in the glow of a city blanketed white, I felt the first crack in the scaffolding I'd built to hold their world together. For once, I wondered if I could let it fall. The snow thickened outside, dusting the Blue Ridge Mountains. But inside, my apartment felt like a mausoleum for dreams I'd buried long ago. As a child, I thought love was a ledger, balanced by effort, measured in silences endured. I was born first. The trial run. As my father once laughed at a summer barbecue, handing Ethan the larger slice of cake. Ethan, the miracle baby, arrived 2 years later, his charm a beacon my parents orbited. I was 6 when he scrawled black marker across our living room walls, wild loops blooming like rebellious vines. My mother called it art, her laughter warm as sunlight. 2 days later, I dropped a ceramic bowl while setting the table, and their faces tightened careless. They said, too serious for my good. I was an obligation, a shadow cast by their golden boy. At school, I chased straight A's. My report cards pristine but unremarked, slid into kitchen drawers while Ethan's soccer ribbon gleamed on the fridge. In 5th grade, I starred in the school play, my lines memorized, my costume hand-stitched. My parents missed it. Citing Ethan's art class showcase? Next time, Alexis. My mother said, stirring soup? Her eyes elsewhere. I learned to swallow disappointment like air. Invisible but necessary. At 16, I wrote a letter to my guidance counselor. Begging for help with medical school applications, I left it on the counter, its edges crisp, waiting for someone to notice. It vanished under grocery lists. Unopened. When I earned a first-round acceptance to the University of North Carolina School of Medicine, I clutched the letter like a talisman. Bursting through the front door, my mother skimmed it, her smile faint. That's intense. Honey, don't burn out. Then she turned back to her casserole, the kitchen heavy with the scent of time and indifference. Ethan, meanwhile, drifted through college, dropping out twice to chase vague, creative dreams. My parents threw him a party each time he re-enrolled. Balloons bobbing in the living room. A framed photo of him with a paintbrush hung like a trophy. My milestones, graduation. Residency passed without fanfare. My name absent from the hallway gallery of Ethan's triumphs. Once, during a holiday visit, I found my old sketchbook in the recycling bin, its pages of sunsets and half-formed poems crushed beneath coupons. We thought it was scrap. My father said, chuckling. I didn't argue. I carried the book home. Its weight a quiet wound. Those years taught me to be the steady one. The girl who fixed what broke without asking for praise. I bandaged my own heart, convincing myself that love meant being useful, that belonging was earned through sacrifice. In our creaky North Carolina home, with its lavender candles and uneven floors, I was the keeper of order, the one who ensured the lights stayed on while Ethan shone brighter. But standing in my Asheville apartment, the snow muffling the world outside, I saw the truth. I'd been building bridges for a family that never crossed to meet me. The realization wasn't loud or jagged. It was a whisper, soft as the flurries settling on my window, urging me to stop running from the girl I'd always been, one who deserved more than a lifetime of waiting to be seen. The snow outside my Asheville apartment fell heavier now, cloaking the world in a hush that mirrored the weight I'd carried into adulthood. Each flake seemed to bury another piece of the girl who'd hoped effort could buy love, leaving me to reckon with the ledger I'd kept without meaning to. After medical school, I moved into a one-bedroom with peeling paint and a radiator that hissed like a resentful cat, my family's home. An hour's drive away, leaned on me like a house on crumbling stilts, when their roof buckled after a spring storm. I wired $3.00 to the contractor, my bank account wincing, when my father's knee surgery left a $500 bill. I negotiated payment plans, my voice steady on the phone while my bills gathered dust. Ethan's freelance art gigs faltered, and I sent $1, $200 for his rent, my fingers trembling as I clicked send. No one asked me to. No one had to. I was the unseen seamstress, stitching their lives together while my threads frayed. At the hospital, I worked double shifts in geriatrics, drawn to patients whose families had faded like old photographs. I sat with a woman named Ruth, her hands gnarled as oak roots, listening to stories of her youth while monitors beeped softly. She called me her quiet angel, her gratitude a fleeting warmth I brushed aside. My work was a mirror. Caring for those society overlooked felt like tending to my unseen wounds. Yet each night, as I drove home under Asheville's starry sky, I felt the ache of being essential but invisible. I paid $600 for my mother's overdue physical therapy, arranged her transport, and never heard a thank you. When Ethan's car battery died at 2 a.m., I covered $250 for a replacement. My sleep sacrificed to his crisis. Their needs were a tide, relentless, pulling me under while I fought to stay afloat. I told myself this was family, being the one who answered every call, who smoothed every wrinkle before it could crease their lives. But late at night, with a mug of chamomile tea cooling on my windowsill, I wondered what it would feel like to be wanted for more than my utility. The hospital's fluorescent halls, the click of my keyboard as I sent another payment, the silence of my phone after each sacrifice. They wove a tapestry of exhaustion. I'd become a ghost in their machinery, fixing, paying, fading. My apartment's walls, bare except for a single-frame diploma, seemed to whisper that I was more than this. But the weight of their expectations, heavy as the snow piling outside, kept me tethered to a role I'd never chosen. I didn't know then that the phone call banning me from Christmas was the crack that would let light through. The moment when I'd begin to see the cost of carrying a family that never carried me. The night of the phone calls, as Asheville's snow turned the world into a blank canvas. I stood in my kitchen, the scent of apple cinnamon lingering like a memory I could no longer trust. The radiator's hum was the only sound as I opened my banking app, its blue glow casting shadows on my face. My fingers hovered over the screen, heart thudding with a strange, unfamiliar pulse. Not anger, but clarity. I canceled the $800 monthly mortgage top-up that had kept my family's home from foreclosure. The confirm button, a quiet rebellion. I locked the emergency fund, $2 set aside for their endless crises, and terminated Ethan's $300 car loan assistance. Each click was a thread snapping, a weight lifting, like a bird testing wings it had forgotten it owned. I wasn't vengeful. I was awake, on a worn notebook. I listed the debts I'd shouldered. $500 for Ethan's camera equipment, $700 for my father's truck tires, countless late-night transfers for their emergencies, The ink blurred under my gaze. Not from tears, but from a grief so deep it had crystallized into resolve. I saw it now. I'd been a scaffold, holding up their lives while mine buckled. I crossed the room, the floorboards creaking, and unplugged my Christmas tree. Its lights fading like a promise I no longer needed to keep. The gifts, wrapped in scarlet paper with ribbons curling like fragile hopes, felt alien now. I carried them to the closet, their crinkling edges brushing my fingers, and stacked them behind coats I rarely wore. The act was deliberate, a closing of a door I'd left ajar too long. I deleted a half-drafted holiday message from my phone, its cheerful words mocking the truth I'd finally faced. No more messages, no more waiting for invitations that never came. The snow outside thickened, muffling the city's pulse, and I felt a stillness settle inside me, as if my heart had finally exhaled. I wasn't the girl who'd spent decades shrinking to fit their mold, who'd believed love was a transaction paid in sacrifice. That girl had dissolved, leaving someone new, someone who understood that belonging shouldn't cost everything. As I stood by the window, watching flurries dance under streetlights, I realized I didn't need their table, their approval, their fleeting glances. For the first time, I was enough. Not because I'd earned it, but because I'd chosen to believe it. The scaffold was gone, and I was ready to build something of my own. Christmas morning dawned in Asheville. The sky a soft gray, snow blanketing my world in a silence that felt like absolution. I sat by the window, a mug of Earl Grey steaming in my hands, its bergamot scent sharp against the stillness. My unlit tree stood in the corner, no longer a symbol of loss, but a quiet witness to my choice. No calls came. No chaotic texts from my family's festive clamor. The absence was a gift. A space where I could breathe without the weight of their needs. As noon slipped past, the day unfolded in slow, deliberate quiet. The hospital's demands paused, my phone dormant. Then, as the sun dipped, painting the hills violet, it buzzed once, twice, 3 times. A text from Aunt Lillian flickered on the screen. "Can you answer? They're saying you ruined Christmas." The words stung. Absurd. And searing. Ruined. I hadn't even been there. When Lillian called, her voice was cautious, like footsteps on thin ice. "They're blaming you," she said, piecing together the chaos. At their Christmas dinner, Celeste had wandered the house, pausing at a faded photo of me on the mantel, a hospital gala. My smile tentative. "That's Dr. Alexis," she'd said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "She saved my grandmother." The room froze, forks stilled, and laughter choked. Celeste's confusion unraveled their narrative, exposing the lie of my heavy presence. She left abruptly, posting a raw X thread about families who discard those who matter most. The post rippled, threatening Ethan's fragile art connections in New York. My family's response was swift in email, polished but hollow, urging me to clarify with Celeste, to save Ethan's reputation. Then came a call to my hospital, my father's voice spinning tales of my instability, a desperate jab to pull me back into line. The administrator dismissed it, but the betrayal burned. Their group texts to cousins painted me as unhinged, a narrative to bury their guilt. Yet I felt no urge to fight back. The snow fell, soft and relentless, and I knew their chaos couldn't touch me anymore. I'd stepped away, and the truth was echoing in the silence I'd left behind. A week later, on a Sunday afternoon, the cold pressed against my Asheville apartment like a living thing. I was at my desk, patient notes scattered, when a tentative knock broke the quiet. Through the peephole, I saw them, my parents and Ethan, bundled in coats, their smiles brittle as frost. I opened the door a crack, letting the chill seep in but holding the boundary firm. My mother's voice, soft as a plea, said, "We just want to talk." I didn't soften their discomfort. Ethan's restless shifting was theirs to bear. "No," I said, the word clean and final. I closed the door. The locks click, a quiet vow. Their muffled voices rose, then faded, Car doors thudding as they retreated. I returned to my desk, the silence wrapping me like a shawl, and felt peace settle deep in my bones. Days later, a package arrived. Its brown paper crinkled, my name in slanted ink. Inside was a letter from Celeste, its ivory paper smudged at the edges. She wrote of her grandmother, now tending roses, alive because I'd stayed late, charting her care when others had given up. You gave her dignity. Celeste wrote, when the world saw only frailty. I framed the letter, its words catching the morning light above my desk. A beacon of worth I hadn't needed to earn. Another email came from my family, raw and pleading. Please ask Celeste to remove her post. Ethan's career is crumbling. I let it sit unanswered. No longer their savior. At the hospital, I tended to patients, their stories grounding me, their trust a mirror of my strength. The snow outside softened, melting into rivulets, and I felt whole. Not because Celeste saw me, but because I'd stopped begging to be seen, to anyone who's ever felt too much, too heavy, too unseen by those meant to hold you close. Hear this, you are not a shadow to be cast aside. You are the light that endures. Step away from tables not set for you, and write a story where your worth is the first line. Weeks after the snow had melted, leaving Asheville's streets slick with the promise of spring, I sat on my apartment's narrow balcony, a chipped ceramic mug cradled in my hands, its warmth seeping into my palms like a quiet reassurance. The Blue Ridge Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks softened by a haze that felt like the world exhaling. The lesson I'd learned wasn't loud or sudden, not a thunderclap of revelation, but a slow blooming, like the first green shoots pushing through frost. It was this: my worth was not a currency to be bartered in the marketplace of others' approval, but a flame I could tend myself, fierce and unyielding, no matter who turned away from its light. For years, I'd measured my value by the weight of their gratitude, believing that if I paid enough $800 for their mortgage, $500 for a plane ticket, countless nights of my peace, I'd earn a place in their hearts. Each sacrifice was a coin dropped into a well, hoping for a ripple of love that never came. The Christmas exclusion, that sharp-edged eviction from their table, had forced me to see the truth I'd been begging for: a seat in a house that never built a room for me. But in the silence of that winter, as I unplugged my tree and closed my door, I discovered a power I hadn't known I possessed: the power to define myself beyond their gaze. At the hospital, I saw it reflected in the patients I tended, like Mr. Ellis, whose trembling hands sketched birds on napkins, his stories of lost summers reminding me that every life holds beauty no one else may see. I'd spent $2, $7 on their emergencies, but the real cost was the pieces of myself I'd given away, thinking they'd make me whole. Now, as I watched a cardinal flit across the balcony railing, its red wings a spark against the morning, I understood that wholeness wasn't something to be earned. It was mine to claim. I started small, buying a $20 canvas to paint again, my brush tracing rivers I'd never seen but felt in my veins. I stopped checking my phone for their messages, letting the quiet grow like moss over old wounds. The letter from Celeste, framed above my desk, wasn't just a testament to one patient's life. It was proof that my impact rippled beyond the walls I'd once thought defined me. I learned to savor moments like this one, the coffee's bitter edge, the mountain's steady presence, without needing anyone to nod in approval. Their final email, begging for $0 but demanding my silence, sat unread, not out of spite, but because I no longer owed them my voice. The lesson wasn't about cutting ties or burning bridges. It was about building a life where my worth didn't hinge on their recognition. I'd been a scaffold, yes, but now I was the architect, crafting a world where I was enough, not for what I gave, but for who I was. As spring's first warmth brushed my skin, I realized that the truest freedom comes when you stop asking others to light your way and start carrying your flame, letting it guide you home.